Thank you, everybody, for joining this webinar for Going the Sunshine for an hour or so. Obviously, with production resuming now, a lot of people and a lot of thought has been given to how we can keep our production shoots safe, keeping people distanced, what crew and so on we need on location, how you can film with cast or contributors. One key element of that is, of course, how do you keep and ensure your kit is as risk-free as possible in terms of virus transmission. I think the bottom line reality is that you can't eliminate risk altogether, but it's very much about, there's quite a lot you can do to minimize any risks of transmission. So what we're looking at today is both what happens when you receive the kit, what protocols the kit room are doing in terms of their cleaning and sanitizing kit, and then also crucially, when you're on location, how you should look after your equipment, what cleaning you should do, especially if you're sharing equipment between different people on the production, different people are handling it, and also in terms of contributors, if they're mic'd up and so on, what you need to do really to try and minimize the risks to yourself and to other members of your crew. For those of you who don't know, my name's Matt. I run DV Talent, which encompasses both the Talent Manager and DV Talent Training. There's also our sister company, The Kit Room. The Kit Room are specialists in really factual entertainment, docs, news, that sort of kit supply. Their preferred suppliers to both the BBC and ITV, and work with a lot of really the top independent production companies, the Minnows, Raws, Hard Cash, Blast, Wilds, on really demanding productions, as well as lots of freelance PDs, DOPs, and others. And we're delighted to have Robin here, who is the manager of the Kit Room, to really run through, as I said, what they're doing and what things you should be doing, what cleaning equipment and materials you need and how to go about it. I'm sure most of you have done a number of these webinars, so you know the protocols, but just to recap the housekeeping, we're going to keep you on mute throughout. If you do have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box, not the chat box, the Q&A box you can find, and if you go down to the bottom of your computer window, and if you put your questions in there, we'll try and do our best to answer all of them as we go along. We'll have a Q&A session right at the end. Okay, over to you, Robin.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, just to reiterate what Matt said, this isn't about eliminating the virus. It's just about kind of lowering the chances to kind of as small as we can kind of possibly manage, while still kind of being able to keep you guys shooting. So here at the Kit Room, we've changed a number of things over the last few months, just for the parts that kind of you may not see. It's just couriers and kind of clients are no longer allowed in the building. All kind of goods and cameras and kit is exchanged kind of on the threshold. And that way we can kind of keep our kind of offices as kind of clean and sterile as possible, and make sure that then the kit kind of going out is in kind of like as clean and sterile way as we can, and sanitized just to the best degree. But again, we can't completely eliminate things. Just to go through, most stuff we are kind of able to clean and kind of do so to kind of a very high standard. The trickiest one, just to begin with, is anything that we kind of call textiles, which is kind of camera bags like this one. You can see there's a lot of compartments in there, there's a lot of Velcro. It's unrealistic for us to actually kind of try to clean and make this kind of a sanitized item. So what we do is we will quarantine these for at least 72 hours on coming back from a hire. So if somebody else hires something, you won't get that same item of textile kit. As I say, camera bags, tripod bags, anything like that, small pouches that the radio mics will come in. You won't get that in between that time. So which means that we can kind of pretty much guarantee that it's kind of virus free, because they're just there. We haven't yet found a realistic way to kind of responsibly be able to clean those at this stage, apart from the touch points, which are kind of handles. And again, not to forget zips. But aside from those, there's not a lot we can do.
And just to clarify, 72 hours is the government's guidance as to how long, you know, the virus can stay on a surface, and that if you leave 72 hours, you're pretty much.
Yeah, it's exactly, and it's the guidelines cover the fact of that how long the virus can survive on a surface and still be able to infect someone. So there is kind of research that kind of, I remember I was reading about saying that it can actually survive on surfaces for kind of weeks, which is true, but then that's such a tiny proportion of the virus, you can never kind of transmit that to a person. So when you do read about the fact that it can last for longer periods, it's widely kind of regarded as the fact that it's no longer kind of a threat because it's no longer transmissible to a human. So that's why 72 hours is the government guidelines.
Okay. And so then going on to cameras.
Yes, moving on to cameras, I think we start to demonstrate with an FS7. The camera, if it's shoulder mounted, because that's where your face is going to, sorry, anything down this side of the camera, which is going to be where your face is going to actually be touching, and the eyepiece. We're kind of encouraging people not to use the eyepieces if at all possible, especially if there's more than one person using the camera. It's a very high risk area because it can be transmitted through the eyes and through the kind of like face. If you've got people sharing eyepieces, if it's at all avoidable, try not to. Obviously on a day like this where you've got bright sunlight, it's very difficult not to. But if people are using eyepieces, it's definitely better to, I mean, it's always good practice to just have one person using the camera if at all possible. But it's definitely good practice not to use the eyepieces. But I'll run through that first. So what we're doing is we're cleaning with a number of products. To start off with this, I will run through just the wipes. You need to get zero taint wipes. It's quite important. It means that kind of whatever you're cleaning, it's not going to kind of damage the surfaces at all. All of this is in the fact sheet that Matt's going to be sending out. So what we'll do with the eyepiece, we'll just kind of pull it back. Just kind of wipe round that part and the glass as well, and then pop that back round and around all the other surfaces of it. Once we've done that, with any of the wipes, even the zero taint ones, we want to kind of get things dry as soon as possible because kind of water is not anything friend really when it comes to cameras. So we then just kind of dry everything off and make sure we're doing the glass as well so you haven't got any streaks in there. Same will go for the camera itself. Again, we're breaking it down into kind of high and low touch points. So we'll start off with the higher ones, which is all of this face here. Now, because we're using the wipes, we know that it's not going to be too wet. If we are using some of the other products like the sprays, which I'll go through in a little bit, we never want to spray something directly onto the camera because it's kind of, they're weather sealed, but these are kind of still quite powerful cleaning products. So we don't want them to kind of be getting into the camera too much. So we're just going to wipe down all of the buttons with that. Where you've got kind of rolling wheels like that, just want to make sure that all of those surfaces are actually kind of moved around that you'll actually kind of cover, and just kind of take all of that face down. Where the cards will go in at the back, again, you might just want to kind of clean around the inside of that seal, as people will be kind of opening and shutting that kind of on a fairly regular basis if you're using a lot. You won't need to go into that socket at all. Just where kind of people will actually touch will be plenty. So it's just about cleaning the camera, any touch points that you've got. Again, top handle, that's another high touch point. So you just want to be kind of quite careful doing that and making sure you're getting everything. And say if there's buttons and switches, you need to kind of move them to make sure all those surfaces are actually being covered. Okay. When you're getting some microphones and cables, it's kind of best to unplug them. Run through the mic. So with the mic and the cable, just clean the actual XLR, and then just make sure you actually run whatever you're cleaning with down the length of the cable, and then the other end of the XLR. You shouldn't need to be getting into this end of it, because that should always be plugged into the camera and people aren't really going to need to touch that, so that should be fine to leave that alone. You want to kind of keep moisture away from there if possible. Again, foamies and softies, there's nothing we can do with this really. So we're just quarantining this when they come back to the kit room, and I'd kind of encourage you that if it's possible to do the same, or just be very aware that this is kind of something which can't be clean and can't be guaranteed to be virus clean. Mics themselves, again, just clean all the way down the length and at the end, and that should now be safe. Just bring it to the other side of the camera. Again, we're just doing all the same points as we were before. This isn't quite such a high risk because it's not against someone's face, but we're still going to kind of make sure we're getting into all the nooks and crannies, unplugging cables where we can. And then just coming around here. Awkward parts are things like curly cables that you're getting kind of going out to grips. Again, we just need to kind of go down that, making sure you were getting all of the cable wet and clean. And then the grip, again, switching switches, just make sure that we're getting everywhere. And that is effectively how to clean a camera. If you were to do the whole thing properly, make sure you're getting all the switches, it's probably going to take you about 4 or 5 minutes. But if you don't have time to do that, something like that, something is always better than nothing. So it's just kind of what you can do at the time. But I think, yeah, about 4 or 5 minutes to kind of properly clean a camera and the grips. The one that we're getting asked quite a lot of at the moment is about contributors and radio mics. The kind of general consensus at the moment is it's probably better not to use radio mics if you can. We're seeing a lot more kind of booms going out just because it's kind of a safer option. Having said that, if you can give a contributor a radio mic to wear for the entire kind of interview or the entire day, for example, and then just give them batteries to change, that can actually be a good option, because it then means you don't need to be kind of going within 2 meters for kind of quite some time. So I'll run through just how to clean the radio mics. The first part, the most kind of high risk on the radio mics is the actual mic itself. I'll come a little bit closer because it's tiny. Again, where you've got the clips, you just want to kind of really kind of make sure you're getting into all of these little bits in there. And the other important thing, just while I'm doing this, to mention is the fact that just before you start kind of cleaning anything, you should ideally be cleaning your own kit that you've been using, and it's still kind of like just washing your hands, anti-backing, just before you do it, so you're not spreading anything if it's not your kit. And then again, just running through the cable, making sure that's all cleaned. And at the other end. And that should be all done. The actual kind of battery pack itself, again, it's a high risk item because it's probably going to sit on someone's belt. People will be fiddling with it, but it's fairly easy to clean. There aren't kind of too many buttons actually exposed on it, so it's just a matter of kind of wiping it down and not forgetting the aerial. You just want to kind of gently clean that because it's slightly delicate. And then you also have the other end of the radio mic, which will be on the camera. So you'll be cleaning that when you clean the camera. So most people are tending to use booms. For the booms, I'll show you the other options if you haven't got any wipes. We are trying to send out wipes with all our cameras, so you will have some with every hire, which you can either use kind of at the beginning or at the end of the hire. We don't require kit to be cleaned before it comes back to us, because we've got a lot of kind of things in place to make sure that kind of our staff are protected, and we're cleaning it as soon as we get it back. If you can, it's great. It's just another kind of line of defense that we've got. So if you can clean stuff before it comes back, it's great, but we don't require it. So with the mic, as I say, fluffies can't really be cleaned, but with anything collapsible like booms, you will need to extend it fully before cleaning it, because all of these surfaces here will then be exposed, and when it's collapsed down, they kind of won't be. So it's just a matter of cleaning that. For that, we use a lot of this. It's kind of giant blue roll, which is available from kind of most B&Q places, Screwfix. This is what we're using to kind of clean most of our kit, with some kind of anti-bac spray. So always spray it onto the actual thing that you're cleaning with, never onto cameras, tripods, anything, because you can get the water in there. You just want it so it's kind of damp but not kind of soaking wet. And then we'll just kind of clean all the surfaces down, as I say, extending it to where it would have been when it had been hired. Then drying it off straight away. And then once all the surfaces are actually dry, you may sometimes need to leave it a couple of minutes just for the last bits of moisture to evaporate. Then you can kind of collapse it down. We don't want to be kind of compacting anything from tripod stands or anything else like that whilst it's still wet. And the same will go for lenses, which I'll go through in a second. Cables, again, it's kind of fairly easy one. Just extend the cable and put some anti-bac onto a surface. We tend to do these twice because they've been on floors and things, and someone could be shooting in a hospital or something. So we just coil it as we go. You can probably get the cable center slightly wetter than you would do a camera or anything else. Just run through it, just kind of keeping whatever you've got wrapped around it as you're doing it, and you can actually kind of make this quite clean quite quickly whilst kind of coiling it up as you go. Again, you need to pay attention to the 2 XLR ports that can be at each end, just to make sure that they are kind of clean as well, but you won't need to go into them because that could cause some damage, and that shouldn't be a touch point anyway. Onto lenses. Probably kind of one of the more high risk things to clean as far as kind of damage goes. I'm going to show you with this one, which is a zoom lens, which is kind of quite useful because it's got kind of an extra part that you will need to clean. So first off, we'll take the hood off. Grab some more blue paper. So we're just going to clean the outside of the hood. The reason for this is around the inside, there's often kind of almost like a fabric-like flecked. If you clean substance, if you clean that, it won't dry. So you just kind of go around the outside, clean that as best you can. Some of the lens, not all of the lenses have this kind of fabric around the inside. If they don't, you can clean the inside of the hood, but this one we're not going to because it has this fabric around the inside. The lens itself, we will give things a full clean before they kind of go out, and also when they come back in again, which includes kind of the glass elements on kind of the front and the rear. If I was on set or actually kind of shooting, I would try and clean with the lens caps on, both front and rear caps. The reason for this is just because you shouldn't ever, the front or rear kind of elements shouldn't ever be touched. So there shouldn't actually be any trace of the virus on those. If, for example, you were filming someone who coughed at it and there was some trace of it on the front element, that's not going to be transferable unless you touch it. So there's no reason to kind of touch the front or rear elements unless you've got a thumbprint on them. First off, with the zoom lens, because it extends, we're just going to run around the extending part and then dry that immediately. The lenses are really, really important to dry off straight away. With most lenses, the rubber focusing and zoom will have lots of little notches running around vertically. So rather than clean across the lens, we're just going to kind of go around cleaning up and down to make sure we're actually getting into those. Because again, they're high touch points and they're also kind of quite difficult to clean. So just rotate the lens around. And again, switches, just make sure you clean them with switch both ways to make sure you're getting in anything behind those. And then we'll just go around and now, normally we would be wearing gloves for these, especially when kind of kit's coming in, but not at the moment, just because we're trying to limit the amount of gloves we use as much from an environmental point of view than anything else. But mostly we will be cleaning wearing gloves. So that's done. Again, we'll dry it off straight away. If you can leave kit out for a little while, if there's a safe area to do so, it's a good idea just to make sure that any moisture that is sitting on it is not packed away in the lens pouch straight away. It's beneficial. The last thing is lights. They're kind of not really a high touch point. If they're hot lights, kind of HMIs or kind of tungsten dados, they won't, many of them won't need much of a clean because they're going to be getting so hot anyway that it's not going to be an issue. But LED lights, like light panels, which are kind of like a staple for a lot of stuff that we do in the documentaries, it's literally just about giving the outside of the light a rough wipe over, and then the high touch points are obviously any adjusting knobs, color temperature, dimming. Just kind of do those slightly more carefully, but everything else just need a brief wipe. And finally, or nearly finally, batteries. Velox, we again clean with a wipe, clean with a spray, but just put it on. The bits to avoid are the actual contacts just there. We really don't want anything getting in there because that could be quite a big problem if you kind of short circuit it or something like that, if there's too much moisture on it. So we're just avoiding the contacts, but we're just going to be cleaning everything else, making sure, especially with the Velox, you're getting behind the actual V plate. Again, it's a high touch point. And finally, cards and card readers. We're using mostly just the wipes for this because there's kind of a controlled amount of moisture on it. I usually put finger down the side which actually has all the contacts on it, and then just clean the card, and that way we're making sure that no moisture is actually getting into the card, because the last thing you want to be is corrupting cards before you've got it to a DIT or something like that. But you want to clean them because they will be getting passed around people, and that should be all you need for a card. I know some people are then kind of writing on card cases where the cards have been cleaned. So if you wanted to do that, it might be an idea if I say they're getting passed around a lot of different people. And that's pretty much it as far as what we're doing at the kit room. Just to run through, there is stuff in the fact sheet about where to get sprays, which ones kind of we're using. Some of the stuff is difficult to get hold of. We recently had on the wipes that we're using, I think we had a 3-week wait on those. We've got a giant tub of them now, so we're going to have plenty, which is one of the reasons that, because some of this stuff is hard to get, we're sending wipes out with the kit just to make sure that you've kind of got everything that you need as best we can. Alcohol is also, like ethanol solutions are being used. You need to be slightly more careful with those than a lot of the other things. Manufacturer guidelines for people like Sony and Canon it's slightly differing as to kind of whether they can damage the front coat of lenses or kind of damage seals, but anything with a very, very high ethanol count on it, you do need to be kind of much more careful and don't use it liberally at all, because if that does make it through past one of the weather seals, that's definitely going to damage the camera or the lens. So that's something that could be a real issue.
Robin, there's a couple of questions just wanted to fire through, and just to remind people, if you do have questions, if you can put them in the Q&A rather than in the chat, that would help. But so Ashok has asked, can you just recap what were the special wipes that you're using, these zero taint wipes, and what is it then you're avoiding, ones which have got a kind of fragrance and that sort of thing?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. We are avoiding the fragrance ones here at the kit room. That has been kind of another thing, which is kind of general manufacturer advice. I would say if it's an option between fragrance ones or nothing at all, you may want to consider the fragrance ones, but just be very careful where you're cleaning. I'd avoid any glass kind of surface with those, any lenses, the actual kind of glass surface definitely, and just be kind of a little bit more careful. At the moment, I'm using some antibacterial wipes from Sainsbury's because they are taint-free. They're kind of good for most viruses, and they just seem to be kind of working very well. We also have a giant tub of the ones that we actually use in the kit room, but I know a lot of people are using the ones from Sainsbury's, whether that's just because they're more readily available. But mostly, the most important thing to look out for is bleach-free and taint-free. And very much ideally fragrance-free.
And the issue is that they leave a residue, is that right?
The issue is that they can either leave a residue, or the fact that they can damage some certain kind of types of rubber, which may be used in the sealing process of around where the lens goes, or anodized components. Some of those react badly with some of the wipes. But I mean, if it has taint-free on it, usually it is actually listed on the front of the packaging. Or if you read through the back, it will say taint-free.
Okay. So a couple of other questions, both related to how frequently you should clean a kit. So one again, Ashok, if it's out on a long-term, 2-week hire, it's being used in one location, is it still advisable to clean the kit every day? And Anna similarly asking, how frequently do you recommend cleaning the camera during a shoot? Is beginning and end of the day sufficient?
Yeah, it's very difficult. There is always going to be a balance between what is actually realistic and what you kind of should be doing. If you have different people using the camera, I'd kind of stress as much as possible, trying to keep the same people using the same kit is really, really important. If you are able to just have one user of the camera throughout the day, that's brilliant. If people needed a break, you just have one person using it in the morning, and then maybe kind of swap. So you've got a boom operator and a kind of like someone else is using the camera, just so you're doing different things. Because obviously we're all working in much smaller teams now. Anytime that the camera especially changes hands between people, it definitely needs to be thoroughly cleaned then, just because it's kind of, there's full of these high touch points. You've got your face pressed up against something which was just someone else's. So there's a very high risk of kind of transmission there if one person was to have the virus.
And just to recap, how long would you suggest people allow within their shooting day to clean it? To give a thorough...
Again, it depends on how many times you're swapping cameras and things like that. I would say everything should really be cleaned in some form kind of once a day. But if it's being left somewhere where you don't have control over the kit and you don't know if anyone else is being in there, you should clean it at kind of the end of the day or kind of midway through the day, and then before you start using it, just in case someone else has picked it up or it's been moved, or so you should be kind of cleaning it then. But I'd say about 5 minutes for a camera. Tripods, they're probably kind of only a couple of minutes if you get quicker at it once you get kind of little systems in to work your way kind of through things. Things like tripods are good to kind of work from the ground upwards. They can probably take about kind of 4 or 5 minutes. It's awkward kit to clean, a lot of it, just because, if you've got things like this, there's a lot of telescopic elements to it, which you'll need to fully extend to clean it, and then drop it down a little bit more to then clean the bits that you've missed, where the actual kind of like legs will kind of be locking in just kind of here. So I would say to fully clean a camera, a tripod, and maybe a couple of lights, I think you're going to need at least 10 minutes, 15 minutes to do a really kind of good job. But then, as you kind of use the camera more, as you get used to regularly cleaning it, you're going to get a lot quicker, because you'll have systems in place of just like, first I'll do the handle, then I'm going to kind of do the kind of high touch point down the side, then I'll do the mic. So you'll get a lot quicker.
Great. So Leslie asking about monitors. How do you clean a monitor like a Ninja? And also she has a DSLR A7S. So again, is it the same principle?
Yeah, it's exactly the same. A7S is kind of slightly easier than kind of an Ace than the FS7s or anything else like that. Often, I mean, we send our A7s out in a cage. You'll need to take the camera out of the cage to clean it properly. But again, clean it with a lens cap on, and then you can kind of do a really good job of it. Don't forget the battery and card compartment and the battery itself, but just trying to avoid the actual kind of contacts on there. Monitors are fairly easy. The high touch points, depending on which monitor it is, we have things like the Odyssey, which are touch screen. So you will need to kind of do a really good job of actually cleaning the glass on that. For that, I would, again, be very careful not to put too much water on it, and to very much clean the actual moisture off it straight away. Where you've got HDMI, BNC inputs on the back, they need cleaning, but kind of carefully as well, because they are exposed areas that you could easily get kind of like moisture in there, which could do a lot of damage very quickly. So it's just a matter of taking those and then just gently cleaning around them and not into anything ever. That's the really important bit.
Great. Okay, a couple other questions. Joseph asking, are interchangeable eyepieces between camera operators so that each operator has their own one a possible solution?
Yeah, it's an excellent idea. I know one company actually doing that. They have ordered in, as I say, if you've got kind of FS7s, they have actually used the actual whole component part of this between operators. It's a really, really good idea, but these are, I forget the price on them, but for a piece of plastic and a piece of glass and just the rubber, and it's quite a lot of money. We have some spares, but not many. So we could try and send some out with kits, but it's kind of obviously going to be very much in demand. But I know it's a really, really good solution. But I would say that if you're going to do that, you would probably need to, because you've still got the glass at the front of it, you would probably need to interchange the actual entire piece rather than just the rubber. But again, if it's a day like this where you've got to be using an eyepiece, then swapping the rubber around on them is definitely kind of better than nothing, or better than sharing an eyepiece.
I guess it all comes down to cost, does it, in the end, and whether production is willing to pay for it. Yeah, fine.
But yeah, just swapping around eyepieces, I have heard that, and I think it is a good idea.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask, because you read a fair bit about UV light and UV light boxes. Is that something that really does?
Yes,
does help?
It helps. There are many things that the more, I mean, obviously, I spent a lot of time looking into this over the last few weeks, because we're essentially all cleaners now. And UV is definitely a positive thing. It is another step you can take to, I mean, for those people who don't know about it, some places are getting kind of almost boxes with UV light in it, which they're putting either a camera or lenses into for 15 minutes, and then that will technically kind of kill the virus. It's not it's not such a good solution as really thorough cleaning. If you're using it as well as thorough cleaning, it's good, but as far as kind of the best solution, really thorough cleaning is by far the better way, because the UV light is only going to hit the virus where the actual light is directly in contact with it. So little nooks and crannies where the light won't kind of directly be hitting it, it's not going to get in there. and you could, I think it's it's like wearing gloves all the time. It could create a false sense of security, which is why at the moment we're not using UV light at the kit room. We will, like everything, constantly monitor it and see if it's going to be a good kind of solution moving forward. But at the moment, we're just spending a lot more time really thoroughly cleaning stuff. And I think that's, for us at the moment, it's better than UV light.
Isn't there also a health warning with the UV light in that? I mean, quite a few manufacturers have raised concerns that it can actually damage the kit. So it's got to be used, if people do use it, it's got to be used with extreme caution.
Yeah, I think essentially no one really knows exactly what it's going to do because no one's been using the UV light in this way. There is some worry about the rubber seals around the lenses, and again on the cameras. It could be doing damage to those if sensors are kind of exposed. I know one manufacturer has said they don't recommend UV cleaning if the caps aren't on. Yeah, I think it's something which can prematurely age the kit, I think, is one of the things that was kind of referenced. So I think really thorough cleaning is better if you can. It's just like kind of the anti-bac on your hands. It's great for when you can't get to a tap and soap and water, but when you can, a really thorough clean is just, it's a better solution.
Couple of other questions. Slightly, you have sort of touched on this. Gavin asking, what cleaning would you recommend for lighting gear such as LED panels, which you talked about, small ARRI 1K lighting, also things like bounce boards and reflectors?
Oh yeah, that's a very good one. Reflectors, you kind of can't really kind of clean well. Again, it counts as textiles. Flags, again, it's more textiles. If you're using polyboards or something like that, you can clean those fairly well, again, just wiping down the actual board itself. But textiles are very, very difficult to clean. Even if, even with UV lights, it's still something which is essentially, a lot of it, like camera bags and stuff, it's made out of kind of sponge in between it. So it's just something which you can clean the surface of these things, but you can't really clean it very well. So I'd say whilst using things like that, just kind of like really kind of good anti-backing of your hands whenever you touch those things, and kind of like hand washing wherever possible is probably kind of a better solution than trying to clean it, because I think you'll end up with just kind of wet kit, which is just going to be a problem.
Great. Last one at the moment we've got is Stephen asking about SD cards. And presumably the same as just CF cards.
Yeah, it is. It's just the same. I think I've got some. Yeah, so what we're doing, let's say it's exactly the same. Just grab a wipe. And again, what you want to do is just protect the actual contacts just across there, and then just wipe down the rest of the card. And then pop it back in its case. But again, just trying to kind of keep your finger over the actual contacts, because that's where you could do damage. And that's basically how you clean an SD card. The micro SD cards are so small and so difficult to clean. It's just, you kind of do what you can there, but it's such a small surface. It's you need to kind of almost be careful of actually not breaking the card when you're cleaning those.
Yeah, okay. There's a couple more questions come in. Just to sort of recap, remind people as well that if you do, I'm just going to quickly share my screen, so you can see the. So if you go onto the Kit Room website, you will be able to see this little summary sheet that we've got, that you guys have written, put up there.
Yeah, that's in the notes as well that we'll be sending out afterwards.
Yeah, fine. And also, if you do have questions, sort of ongoing questions about kit, the technical issues, or also just about these cleaning procedures and so on, you can always just email hire@thekit.room.
Yeah, I mean, I really encourage that. And I mean, it's not just for kind of kit that you've got out with us. If you've got queries about your own kit, I'd much prefer to kind of help you out than you damage kit or something. Or so yeah, we'll either kind of drop us an email or give us a call, and we can, either one of our techs or myself can run you through the best way to kind of clean stuff. As I say, even if it's your own kind of kit, in-house kit, it's something that we haven't covered. It's kind of quite often we've had calls, can I clean this? You know, how should I clean this? And it's something that, you know, we're more than happy to answer.
Right. So another couple of questions quickly coming in. Emma asking about cleaning iDirect mirror box.
Right. Yes, that is one that we thankfully haven't done yet. We haven't had one go out. That will take some time to clean. The most important surfaces of that, it's less touch points. It's more exactly kind of what's going to be facing your contributor. Whereas they're kind of like looking into it. That's going to need quite careful cleaning. And again, on the surfaces, the actual kind of optical surfaces of that, you're going to have to be very careful not to get any streaks or smears. I would suggest with that, probably using on the actual kind of the optical surfaces, definitely using a optical kind of lens cleaning solution and lens tissues. If you haven't got any lens tissues, just a very soft tissue will do the trick. But yeah, that's something which has a lot of kind of quite fiddly parts to it. It's kind of the interior and the exterior of it. That's probably going to take you kind of a little while to clean. But the important points again are the other ones that are facing the contributor and the one that's facing the camera person.
Right. There's I've just sent out people. Someone was asking about what the email address is for the kit room. It's hire@thekit.room.co.uk. Yeah. I suppose one of the things I would stress as well to everybody is that if you're a freelancer and you're going into a production company and they want you to go out on a shoot, it's probably worth just having that conversation with them at the outset. What are their procedures, where they got their kit from, what measures have they factored in to allow in their schedule for time to clean and make sure kit is well looked after. Again, this is new territory for everybody. It's not at all that necessarily the production companies are being negligent about this, but production managers and everyone else need to be made aware, and you as a freelance shooting PD or AP also need to take their responsibilities to making sure that things are being done properly within your teams. So Toby asking, how would you go about cleaning bigger kit like a slider or a Ronin?
Ronins and kind of Movies and things like that. Again, it comes down to kind of like high touch points needing more work. So the handles, especially on Ronin gimbals. Again, some of the earlier Ronins, the motors are fairly exposed on those. So you need to be very careful not to get moisture into the brushless motors where the actual kind of like, where it'll actually be rotating the gimbals. So it's plenty of cleaning on the high touch points, but then a wipe over the motors and all of the handles, which should kind of be enough. Again, a high touch point, it would also be where the actual camera fits onto it, where the dovetail plate would be, just because that's going to get kind of like fairly, if you're taking the camera on and off it to do different things, that's going to need kind of a little bit more cleaning just because it's a high touch point. Sliders are fairly easy, depending on kind of which ones. If you've got the kind of Tango roller dollies, which are kind of more substantial, they'll take quite a while. But things that we have, like the MYT sliders, here, they're fairly easy. And I mean, just kind of whilst I'm getting a bag out, it's really easy to forget that handles on bags are very high touch points. So you just want to be kind of cleaning the bowls where the actual kind of tripod head is fitting in, making sure you're getting kind of the underside of it. And as far as the actual rails go, you should just be able to run the kind of cleaning kind of solution, or kind of whatever you're using to clean it, the wipes, all the way down the length of both of those, and paying kind of like quite a lot of attention to the ends of the slider, because they're going to be high touch points where people are just naturally holding it whilst they're kind of moving the camera up and down the slider.
Last question I think we've got now, Joseph, is more actually a suggestion, which is, and he's just throwing this out there as a thought, which is, if every crew who use gear wore gloves, is there a way to reuse the gloves? This is, I think, is the point being here, to reduce costs and environmental impact. For example, once used, they get sterilized and reused before every person, and before each person reuses them, they then scrub their hands thoroughly before putting them back on. This could be a solution to help mitigate the environmental impact of using gloves and too many wipes.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that we are not using wipes exclusively at the kit room, it's the easiest way to clean things is by these wipes. Environmentally, this whole thing is not good at all. Over the last kind of couple of years as a company, we've gone through quite a lot of effort to become very environmentally friendly, and most importantly, kind of carbon neutral. So kind of reducing waste as much as we can is really, really important. As far as that goes for us, as I say, we're using kind of that blue roll much more than the wipes. The wipes are probably more useful when you're kind of out on set, but from an environmental point of view, they're not good at all. I'm really glad that someone's brought it up, actually. So I would say, where possible, use the paper wipes and a spray. But as I say, when you're actually kind of out in the field, you may need to use the wipes. Reusing gloves, I don't know what the guidelines are on that. I know from when I've looked into it, the thin gloves that we're issuing to people are kind of techs and things. We haven't found a way that we can responsibly reuse those at the moment. I would imagine if you were to, there could possibly be some way that you could then quarantine the gloves that were used for, at least 72 hours, I would say, and then you could possibly reuse them. But if you're in a place that you can regularly kind of wash your hands, you may well be better off just not using the gloves at all, and just kind of washing your hands before and after kind of cleaning something, or before and after using a piece of kit.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, I think, and Stephen here makes the point that preferring hand sanitizers to gloves, there is a sense, I think, as you said, of false security with gloves, and people are complacent. Actually, it is much more possible it's much better to really think, clean your hands, clean your kit properly, and think safely about it, rather than just relying on gloves or some other bit of PPE to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's just more of a responsible way to do it if you can. So it's not always going to be an option to you, but yeah, there's definitely things like gloves can give you a full sense of security, and then perhaps you won't wash your hands as much as you were, or you won't anti-backy as much. So it can create kind of almost more harm than good. And gloves are only there to stop transmission from one thing to another. They're not really going to, if you touch something which has kind of the virus on it, and then you still touch your face with the gloves, you're going to get this high chance you'll get the virus anyway. So that's technically no different to kind of using your hands, but it's just about kind of using them in the correct kind of manner as much as possible.
Yeah. So we've now got a few more questions coming in. Helen asking, are there good examples of revised risk assessments that prompt COVID safety practices that you've seen in terms of kit use? And also Ashok asking, are people, he's not been out shooting yet, are people generally shooting with gloves and masks? I've seen masks being used quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely masks, yeah. Yeah, I'd say kind of masks are probably are a good practice. Again, like anything, it comes back to that it might give you a full sense of security, but my understanding is the masks are as much about protecting, or probably more so about protecting others from you. If you kind of like were asymptomatic and had the virus, then it's as much about kind of protecting others from you. So I think most crews I've seen and the ones that we've dealt with are using masks at the moment. Gloves, I would say less so. But yeah, definitely masks. As far as kind of good protocols and things like that and what people are revising, it differs hugely from things that I've read and different companies and everything else like that. And I think some of it's kind of slightly vague, but I think as an industry, I think everyone is actually doing kind of a very good job and taking this very seriously. Certainly everyone I've spoken to when in kind of actual practices, but it's difficult to kind of have exact kind of protocols and things that people shouldn't be doing, because as Matt said earlier, it's kind of very early days. So it's just about kind of lowering the risk in every single way that we can at our end, and then kind of hopefully kind of you're able to do it kind of at your end once the kit's out, and then between all of us we can kind of keep everyone shooting. And I mean, it's important times, the next kind of especially few weeks when people are starting to shoot again, that kind of we all do as much as we can, just to make sure that there's kind of good practices there, because that will mean that we can all of us start shooting kind of much more in the coming months.
Yeah. And it is that thing, I think, again, obviously every production's different, each company or each shoot you're going on, you're having to, there's no one size fits all risk assessment. It's about really thinking through what it is you're doing and where the possible issues may be. Leslie is saying that someone's recommended her sanitizing bags, and have we looked at sanitizing bags?
I haven't heard of those actually, no.
Okay. Well, Leslie, what we'll do is we'll look at those, and
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, we'll look at those, and if we think they might work and be useful, we'll also add those to our suggestions sheet. And Michaela asking about, how about using hand sanitizer regularly? Can they damage the kit? I assume, Michaela, you mean if you're putting hand sanitizer direct on your hands rather than directly on the kit, and then your hands are all over the kit. I guess not to have it
as long as it's, I mean, we've got kind of 80% alcohol hand sanitizer in the office. I would imagine it would start to kind of irritate my hands before the kit. So I'm fairly confident, as long as it isn't, your hands aren't soaking wet with hand sanitizer and you're using the kit, you should be okay. Again, it comes down to just things being dry. But I would imagine if there was something which was kind of like nasty in it or something, it's going to irritate your hands before the kit. But it's just mostly kind of having dry hands.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, I mean, I would say just don't have great globules of that, as you say, on your hands, and then pick up a camera and rub your hands all over the buttons would be probably my suggestion. But right, listen, I think that pretty much has come to you've got no more questions. We will look at Leslie's suggestion about the sanitizing bags and add that to our checklist, which we'll send out to all of you. As I said, I hope that's been useful and just gives you a bit of a overview of things to be thinking about. And once again, it really is important that you, if you are the shooters, take the responsibility for thinking through what you're having to do. Make sure your production manager, your company, have factored that into their schedules and what they're expecting you to get done in a day. And if you're working in a team, making sure everybody else on the team is also up to speed to what you need to do. Zoe is saying we'll send out, we've got your email, so we'll send out the suggestions on email. But in the meantime, you can also have a look on our website. Just once again to reiterate, if you've got any other questions, you can email hire@thekitroom.co.uk. If you are a freelancer and want to hire from the Kit Room, you need to give it set up an account. A lot of productions will have accounts already with the Kit Room. And if you're a Talent Manager Pro member, you also get discounts with kit hire through the Kit Room. So it is worth contacting them if you're a Talent Manager Pro person in particular. But yeah, Robin and the team are always there and very happy to help and answer any other general questions. In the meantime, thank you very much, Robin, and thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope that's been useful.